All right, so I am showing here how to use the T distribution. This is for section 6.2 and 6.4, at least starting out. This is the first couple times that we need the T distribution. And so when you're in StatKey, you will see next to the normal distribution, which is what we've been using, Z test statistics. We're going to be using this here instead. This is T distribution for 6.2 and 6.4. And when you go in here, the first thing it's going to ask for is your degree of freedom. Now, if I look at 6.2, there is a time when we were doing confidence intervals. And in here, we needed to get our value for our T star. And T star is up here as part of the confidence interval formula. So we can't do anything until we know what T star is. And so when we get here, again, keep in mind, you're taking your sample size. In this case, it's 11. You're going to minus 1, and that's going to be your degree of freedom. The other thing is, for your confidence interval, you need to know whether you're doing a 90%, 95, 99. In this case, we're doing 90%. So keep in mind, we've got degree of freedom 10, and we need a 90% confidence interval. And so when you go here, I'm going to put in the degree of freedom, which is 10. And then I need to turn on the two tail. All that's essentially doing is just opening up these controls, because without that, there's no way to adjust for what size confidence interval you need. It defaults at 95, but you can change it to 90 or whatever confidence interval that you're trying to create. And then down at the bottom, this is going to be your value for your T star, 1.812. And so as you see that here in the lecture handout, that's where I got that from. You would then move on to calculate the confidence interval as given up here in the formula. The other place that we were needing in 6.2, the T distribution, is if you were wanting to get a p-value. Now, there's also example here where you were doing a 99% confidence interval with a degree of freedom of 1916. It's the same thing. It's just you would go here, you would edit the parameters to be your degree of freedom. So I put 1916, turn on your two tail, and then change this to 0.99. And then you'll see the 2.578. That's how you're getting the T star value to help you make your confidence interval. But in 6.2, when we're doing hypothesis tests, this is as you work through, you will run into a part when you need to get your p-value. And to get your p-value, these are the two things you need. You need your T test statistic, and you also need your degree of freedom. Again, degree of freedom is -1. And so your sample size is 29, so degree of freedom is 28. But I'm going to take both of these two things here. And maybe what I'll do is I'll start from the very beginning of StatKey. That's usually a good idea, so that when you come in here, you know to adjust your degree of freedom to what you need in this situation. Right now, it's degree of freedom 28. So I'm going to type in 28, hit enter. And then, as we've done in the past, you need to be considerate of what sort of tail you're doing. Right now, we're doing a right tail test. And so you'll click right tail. And then, like we did with the Z statistic, we're going to put our T statistic down here. And in this case, it was right here. This is 7.36. Again, this is after we've already done part A, B, C, D. This is just to get you your p-value. So you put your degree of freedom and then 7.36, 7.36, and then this will give us our p-value, which just essentially means a bunch of zeros. And so in lecture, we said that would just be a very significant p-value. And then you would also do it for another example here. Again, just every time that you get to this step where it's asking for your p-value from the T distribution, put in your degree of freedom and then put in your T statistic. So let me show you here, 29 and negative 1.95. So I like to just usually get out and come back in. This just reminds me that each time I need to update my degree of freedom to this new study. And then you also, in this case, we were doing a left-tailed test, left-tailed, and the T statistic was negative 1.95. You got to come down here, negative 1.95. You got a p-value of 0.030. And that's where this came from here. You'll do similar things for your homework. And so I'll go ahead and stop the video here. I'll do a separate one for 6.4, but it's going to be very, very similar.